welcome to the Political Millennial podcast. Today we are going to talk about Biden's joint address to Congress. I've been trying to talk about this for probably, like 4 days. I don't know. I keep having computer issues. My computer's old. It has no memory on it, so I continuously have to clear it. Anyway, we're getting to the joint address to Congress. We'll talk about it briefly, and then we're going to talk about Biden's potential threat to between 50, 75, 100 million Americans. This is worrying, and I'm a member of this community, and y'all will see exactly what I'm talking about when I get to it, but this was spurred by something that Biden actually touched on in his address very, very briefly. But it's a big issue for a sixth of the country, about somewhere around there. But you know what? It's a lot of people. We'll get to it. We're going to get into this real quick. My name is Connor. I am the Political Millennial. Let's do it. Okay, so Biden's address to joint session of Congress, right? Well, as you've probably heard, one thing can be said about this. It was super boring, but CBS came out with this poll that said 85% of people who watched the address, which, remember, not that many people comparatively to the number of the actual population of our country, but 85% approval rate by CBS was put out there. And it has now been determined. This happened last week sometime, obviously, but it was based largely on Democrats. Like the number of Republicans who were included in that poll were very, very small. The number was not large at all. Once again, we see that, the media is putting out some propaganda trying to influence you to think that Biden is, this mighty leader who everybody approves of, which is just not true. It's not. And we can tell that it's not true, one, by the special election that was held here, or that is being held here in Texas, up in the Fort Worth area. There's not even a Democrat in the race at this point, so something is going on there for the Democrats, and it doesn't look so good for 2022, like I've been saying since the start of this podcast, like 2 months ago. But, this is fully propaganda. But, you may think that Biden sounded good, relatively remained coherent most of the time, and you're free to think that, honestly. You can think whatever you want. I don't care. But the speech made the U.S. look kind of weak. Just the optics of it. And that doesn't say a whole lot on Biden's performance, other than that it was pretty flat and very one-sided, didn't speak a whole lot to the right, even though he preaches unity all the time, right? He preaches unity. That's what he's here to do. He's the unifying president. This mass unification is going to take place under Biden, but no, that's just turning out to not even be close to true. But he did remain coherent a majority of the time, I guess you could say. But he definitely started to trail off at the end, if you remember. But back to the weak optics. Keep in mind, every single person in the House chamber that night was vaccinated. They were some of the first people to get vaccinated because due to the nature of their job, they have to meet a lot of people, speak to a lot of people, shake hands. I just pressed a button. It took me way down the show. The chamber was something like 20%, 15% full, and that includes having members up in the gallery, right? So they really cleared the place out. But did you see the picture of Biden with the mask on the teleconference with the world leaders, and no one except for Biden is wearing a mask? This is the same thing. It's the same sort of virtue signaling. That's all that it is virtue signaling. Like, they're trying to project, and you know that this was not a request put forth by any Republican, right? This was probably a request of the White House to have every single person in there masked up, spaced 15 seats apart, which is not true, but it looked that way. The chamber's huge. It has to hold all the representatives in one place whenever there's not a pandemic. The House chamber is massive. It's way bigger than the Senate chamber, but the country as a whole looks scared. And these are our national representatives, right? They speak for our states, our districts. We looked weak in front of the world. Not only did we look weak when Biden wore his mask, and the White House is claiming that he was wearing a mask during that FaceTime conference thing with all the world leaders because there were other people in the room. I'm sorry, but if you're working with the president, if you work at the White House and you're around the president and all of the staff, are you not vaccinated at this point? I would assume that every single person in the White House, because there are no visitors right now, right, other than heads of state, who are also vaccinated, every single person's going to be vaccinated who's around the president. It's just the truth. They're not going to take that chance with the president. And that's another thing they say about the mask. Don't want to take the chance. But this is post CDC guidance that says if you're around vaccinated people inside and everybody's vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. So why in the world are we wearing a mask for the joint session of Congress? Because every single person in that room, including televisors, if they're there, camera operators, are going to be vaccinated. They're not going to let people who aren't vaccinated at this point around the president. So why are we wearing masks? We look weak in front of the entire world. You think the EU's over there doing that? Everybody's vaccinated? No. I don't know that for sure, but I can bet that as long as everybody's vaccinated, they're probably trying to move on with their lives like we should be. But here we are, a year and a fourth later, still wearing masks, even though the entire... Again, it's a big room. There's airflow in there. There's airflow. There's circulation. And we're still wearing masks. We just look weak. That's all I have to say about it. It's stupid. Why are you still wearing a mask? I know it's, probably a request from the White House, but every single person in there was vaccinated. If the CDC... It's stupid. It's stupid. Why are you wearing a mask inside? Everybody's vaccinated. Well, it's dumbfounding the way that even our representatives who are supposed to be our leaders are just sheep. They just follow what they're told to do. And there are some people who speak out, and those are the people that are hated by the other side. But my goodness. And then I don't remember, Thursday, Friday, one of the days last week, on the Today Show, Biden did an interview with one of the journalists, in air quotes, I guess you could say, on NBC, saying that he's going to continue to wear a mask, whether he's inside or outside, because it's his and your patriotic duty to do so. But, Joe, when are we going to get to take the masks off? Because the CDC says we're Gucci, we're good to go. We don't have to be wearing the masks if everybody's vaccinated. To be frank, to be quite honest, there are people, such as myself, who aren't vaccinated and aren't wearing masks because we're not in a demographic that are going to be massively affected by COVID. If you want to get the vaccine, get the vaccine. I don't care. Do what you want. But, I think we should save these doses for people who actually need the vaccine until way down the road when the science is proven to not harm young people. And I know there are some studies coming out around this time now that say it's safe, but I don't know. I'm still skeptical. I just am. But when are we going to get to take the masks as a whole, as a country? When are we going to get to take them off? Because at this point, it's not looking so good. Biden keeps saying by the end of the summer, I think we'll be in a much better position than we are now. And I just don't buy it. Because he was saying that about this time last year. So, at what point, co-dictator Biden, at what point are you going to be okay with the person sitting across from you having a bare face? When are you going to be okay with that? Because you seem pretty pro-mask at this point. And I understand you're the leader of the country and you want to set a good example, but like on the day you announced people who are vaccinated don't have to wear a mask outside anymore unless they're in a huge group of people, you said that you were going to be not wearing a mask outside, and then you come out the very next day or 2 days later, whenever it was, and you say it's your patriotic duty to continue to wear that mask no matter who you're around, no matter whether they're vaccinated or naturally immune because they had COVID, which the science is starting to prove that if you have had COVID, you're good for life. And it's continuing to be pushed by these pharmaceutical companies I'm by no means anti-vax. I just want proof that it's safe for, fertility and there are things in my life that I want to do that I question about this vaccine, and you should too. Always question and find the facts for yourself. That seems to be a common theme in podcasts nowadays. Verify the information for yourself. Just go out and try to find it because you don't want to be misinformed. And you definitely don't want to be disinformed by the media or myself. But I'm just relaying the information that I've found and that I find to be relatively accurate. But what point is it going to be okay to not wear a cloth on your face? It's literally crazy. The administration said once we start to get people vaccinated, those people will be good to go maskless. And here we are with a governmental agency which directs the nation as a whole against disease, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that is the CDC. They are saying you are good to go without a mask if you're vaccinated. And the Democratic Party as a whole and the White House are just, they are pushing back on that. They don't even care what the CDC says at this point. They're going to continue with their narrative. They're going to continue until, I don't even, that's the hard part about this. There is no way of knowing when the Democrats will be okay with you being vaccinated and not wearing your mask around other people. And also, if you're vaccinated, this is a question. If you're vaccinated and around other people who aren't vaccinated, there is a 99.98 or something like that % chance that you are not going to die from COVID if you are vaccinated. That's what the science is starting to show. It's a very, very high number. A very high likelihood that you will be fine. So why are we still directing people to wear a mask around people who aren't vaccinated? That's not the point. You don't get the flu vaccine and then wear a mask because you don't know who else has the flu vaccine. You just would be crazy at that point. It's the same thing, except the coronavirus is actually less deadly than the flu. For most ages. Less deadly than the flu. It's actually COVID is very similar to one of the common cold viruses you can catch. So, why are you still wearing a mask around people who aren't vaccinated? If it's their choice to not be vaccinated, right? If you're vaccinated, it doesn't harm you at all. Don't push back against this sheep narrative that they're pushing on you. Use some common sense for once. For once, use your brain. Don't feel that it's a patriotic duty to wear a mask, because it's not. Nowhere in the Constitution or Bill of Rights or anything does it say that patriotic duty number 1, wear a mask. Nope. And if it ever does say that, then we are in some serious trouble. Serious trouble. But we see the president say, I'm good, not wearing the mask outside. You'll see me wear it inside, because apparently the White House has horrible ventilation, and everybody in there who's vaccinated, is still gonna, if one person gets COVID, a very minor case of COVID because they are vaccinated, it's spreading to everyone, and the entire White House is gonna just be demolished by COVID. It's not gonna happen. You know that the White House actually has ventilation built for a gas attack. It was put into place starting around World War II, when mustard gas and other gases were being used as weapons of war. They put in ventilation systems in order to clear that gas out while they get the president out of there, into the bunker, where there's even better ventilation systems. People who are vaccinated in the White House, they've got a very, very slim chance of even feeling sick from COVID at this point. I mean, it's just ridiculous what we're having to go through as a country. They're trying to, I don't even know what they're trying to do. Clearly they're trying to control something, but I've not really not worked it out exactly what they're going for here yet, because it's cloudy, because the narrative keeps changing for the Democrats. Wear the mask, don't wear the mask. At first, they weren't even effective. There's no point. Did people die from that directive from Fauci, by the way? Have we decided that? Like, were the early deaths caused by not wearing masks? That's something somebody should look into. I don't know how you would find the statistics on that, but I don't know. It's just literally crazy. It's literally crazy. The administration said once people are starting to get vaccinated, we're good. Then we saw the president claim he'll stop wearing a mask outside, like the CDC says. But now he's like, F that. I'm doing it anyway because I'm a patriot. All right, I thought the Democrats were against this whole patriot movement. Now they're trying to claim masks are patriotic, which at a certain point they were. You could argue that they were at a certain point. I still hated wearing the mask, but I did it because at the time it seemed like the right thing to do. But once the science came out, the vaccinations started happening. Don't need it anymore. I won't be affected because I'm young and I'm healthy. And if I start to feel sick, like I'm gonna just quarantine. Like, it's not that big of a deal. If I have any symptoms or signs at all, I don't want to endanger other people. Who does? That's inhumane. That's against human nature. Unless you're a horrible person, which there are people out there. But another question for you is that who in the Democratic Party heard Joe say that, co-dictator Joe say that, and come back to him and be like, Joe, what were you thinking? You can't not wear a mask outside. What message does that send to the people? Who ordered Joe to continue to wear the mask? Who do you think it was? Was it Harris? Co-dictator Harris? Co-VP or co-president Harris? Was it her? Or was it Chief of Staff? Fauci? Who? Because his decision changed pretty quick. I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. Your messaging is all over the place, Joe. You're pitting Democrats against Republicans through mixed messaging from the White House, and the CDC. Stop the mixed messaging, because you're just confusing people, and that could actually harm people in the long run. I mean, I was at the grocery store a week and a half ago, because I mean, it would have been a few days ago when I was supposed to record this. No. Yeah, it was just a few days ago. And I was getting stares here in Texas because I was following, I wasn't following CDC guidelines, but in Texas, you do not have to wear a mask when outside. No mask mandate anymore. Y'all know this. No more masks in Texas, unless you can wear it if you want. I didn't want. But I mean, H-E-B, a grocery store, is a huge place. There's air movement. You're not going to get somebody sick in a large place. It's like the size of a super Walmart. Is that a thing? I don't know. But I wasn't the only one. There were other people wearing masks. It wasn't just me. Or other people not wearing masks. But it's crazy. Just the stigma of not wearing a mask. I'm definitely not gonna die from COVID, and I've not been exposed to COVID. So why are you staring at me like that? Worry about yourself. You've got your mask on. You're fine, right? Masks don't work anyway. The science doesn't prove masks have any control. Any control over it. 6 feet's the same as 60 feet, right? With masks on. So there's no point. Wear it if you want, but I'm taking it off. But in this speech, we'll go back to the speech. I'll stop harping on the mask thing. In the speech, Biden couldn't even hit his one-liners. His strong statements he was supposed to make. He couldn't do it. He messed up the lines multiple times. But here are an example of the worst one. There's a few, but this is the worst one. And it was fairly early in the speech, too. It wasn't super far in, not even halfway. But Biden said, quote, "We have to do more than just build back better. We have to build back better." What? What? No, wait, what? We have to do more than just build back better. Build back. We have to build back better. I wish that I could say he did it on purpose to try to reiterate his point. But he just misread. Did he misread? Did he have a slip of the mind, slip of the tongue? I'm not sure. But the left has kind of put out this narrative that it was his stutter. But it's really just Joe getting old and starting to get forgetful, and this happened. It's not an abnormal thing for people to start misspeaking as they get older, having a hard time getting things out. It's not that abnormal, but this is our president, and this is happening in front of the entire world. The State of the Union, which it wasn't technically that, because apparently it's not been long enough of Joe being in office to actually claim it's the State of the Union, because he just inherited the presidency. But in this joint session in front of the world, he's out there it's not stuttering. See, I'm even having to stop myself from saying that because the narrative of the stutter is so strong. But if you look back at old videos of when Biden was in the Senate, when he was VP, there's no stuttering. Did he say things he shouldn't have said sometimes? Yes. But as far as a stutter, no. He overcame that stutter a very long time ago, before he was even in office. So the narrative of the stutter thing is not true. He also said, and this is kind of changing the subject, but I thought it was a really strange, like, way to say it. He said, when I think climate crisis, I think jobs. So that spurred the thought. Is that one of the reasons why the Democrats are pushing climate crisis so hard? Is that the reason for it? Jobs. I know that they claim the world's going to end in, 9 years now if we don't change our ways. Keep in mind, by the way, we are not the problem in the world when it comes to, like, greenhouse emissions. It's not us. We're doing our part more than many other countries. Many, even first world countries. The main problem is China. But China Joe's not going to come out and say that, of course, because, he's taken an actual $1 billion from the CCP, and that probably wouldn't bode so well for him on the national, global scale, because China would probably come out and say something about that and as a president, you don't want that. And he's even claimed he'll be hard on China, but soft on China. So, but we're not the problem in the climate crisis, right? We're doing our part. We have cut emissions by quite a good amount. But is the climate crisis narrative cause for jobs? Like, is that what they're pushing? This is something that occurred to me in the speech. Like, are they trying to create jobs solely from the climate crisis? Which I wouldn't put it past them. He said, quote, "The American Jobs Plan will create millions of jobs." And this is turning it a little bit too, but Biden claims, economic experts have said this. It's easy to say that these policies will create millions of jobs, but how? How is it going to create these jobs? I don't really get it, because he's out. Biden, within his first day of being in office, canceled the Keystone Pipeline, effectively destroying hundreds of thousands of jobs across different industries, by the way. It's not only the oil industry that was affected by that. Same with the border wall. Steel is affected. Construction affected. Like, there are different industries across the board that are affected when Biden puts his signature on some executive orders. But exactly how are you creating new jobs when really you're just netting out, like zeroing out the amount of jobs you've already destroyed? Those aren't new jobs, Joe. They're not new. They're replaced jobs. Coming out to like a net zero, like I said, or even negative in some points. How are you going to create millions of jobs by one initiative? Millions. I don't think that's ever been claimed before, and if it has, it hasn't come true. Maybe over time, which is probably what he's talking about, because, he has this 10-year type plan of spending $10 trillion or something around that figure. But there are going to be less jobs in America after this, especially if you continue down the path of, I know you're saying buy American and all that, but let's be honest, you've got some controlling interests in China, don't you? And in Ukraine, which is why you're anti-Russia. Because Ukraine is anti-Russia, and obviously Russia's trying to... They're in a war with Ukraine, essentially, right now. So we don't really want to be pro-Russia, except that, global trade is an issue when it comes to being anti-anybody. That is true for any country. But tell me, Joe, which jobs have to be destroyed for you to create these new jobs? It's obviously oil and coal and even the auto industry. You will destroy jobs there. because not every company is going to be able to adapt to the point that you're trying to get them to adapt to. But I just don't see how you're going to create millions, especially from the climate crisis. What are you going to do to create those jobs? That's a great question for you there, Joe. If you want to answer it, I'm here to hear what you have to say. And so is the rest of America, because most of us are pretty worried, as you can tell from the special election in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Biden also said, and this is interesting, like, I think it's funny, really. The Biden administration has used more alliteration in their speech than any president's administration that I've seen. I mean, I've only been around since Clinton. I was born in 94, but I don't really remember Clinton anyway. I remember George Bush being the first president that I actually remember anything about, like, in life. But he said, the American Jobs Plan is a blue-collar blueprint to build America. Man. Biden's speechwriters love that alliteration. They love to alliterate with B. And, that's probably because it goes with Biden. They want people to remember Biden. But let's remember back to the campaign slogan. Build back better. We're going to build back better. I'm not really trying to do an impersonation of Biden, if you can tell. It would be better than that, 100% better than that if I was trying to do an impression. If you're listening on audio, I'm shaking my head. So there's Build Back Better, and that goes with Biden's Build Back Better plan, obviously. And then there's the American Jobs Plan. I'm just pointing out all the alliteration here for you, if you're wondering what I'm doing. And there's the American Jobs Plan, which is Biden's blue-collar blueprint to build America, right? And then you put them both together, and it's Biden's blue-collar blueprint to build America back better. There's so much alliteration happening from this campaign. Has anyone else noticed this? Please comment, tell me if you've noticed this, because it just occurred to me as I was writing this, and I think it's just so funny that they're using so much alliteration because they have nothing else to do. Nothing else can help them try to win the American people over. So they're using this alliteration to try to get people to remember and think, ooh, that right there is catchy. That's what they want people to think. And by it being catchy, hopefully, they're thinking, hopefully they'll think that, oh, this is a great plan. Because it sounds good. But back to the, real issues going on here. I didn't realize that green energy was blue collar. So green energy is blue collar now. I don't know if you've heard this, but this was part of Biden's speech. Green energy is blue collar. Even though, and I didn't even write this in my outline, even though green energy takes engineers to make. You don't just have assembly lines of people putting stuff together. Not really. There is a special technical training that goes into building green energy, like solar panels and windmills and hydroelectric plants and like the wind turbines. These are very technical jobs, not something typically that an oil field worker is going to be able to transition to do. It takes some sort of education to be able to, engineer solar panel farms. There's a science to it, and I'm not saying that the oil industry as a whole is unintelligent or anything like that. That's not true. My father-in-law is the VP of sales at an oil industry company. Like, I have massive respect for the oil industry. It's made America what it is, starting way back with Standard Oil. Like, that oil is something that built America. It really did. So there is intelligence 100% in the oil industry. I'm not saying anything like that. What I'm saying is that These are higher technologies than just drilling down into the earth and getting this substance that we refine and turn into gas and petroleum and other things like that. These are highly technical jobs, so don't buy into and it's not just me saying this. Like, I'm getting a lot of what I'm saying from people whose jobs were canceled from the Keystone Pipeline, from Biden's restrictions on fracking and federal lands, things like that. Like, I'm getting this information from other places. This isn't just what I think. But, the Democrats, they want to be known as the party of the working class, yet they're pushing this technology-based energy consumption industry that will take 4-year degrees to learn to build, to learn how to operate in some cases, and have literal billionaires doing their bidding in the public. Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. Think of any major corporation and a lot of those people who are leading those corporations nowadays at least think they have to lean left because that's where the power is. Think about it. If you're not on the media side, you're on nobody's side. The Democrats claim to be the party of the working class. But how can that be true when that's the exact class of people the Biden administration is attacking? The Biden administration is attacking these people's livelihoods in these industries. They attacked the oil jobs at the Keystone Pipeline, canceled that. They attacked oil jobs again by banning the fracking on federal lands. And who knows what else they're going to do to the oil industry. And now they're starting to attack and target oh man. Wow, that is horrible timing. In case you're wondering why I paused there, it's because Safari shut down and my outline is on Google Docs, as you may have heard through social media. And sometimes Google Docs does not like to work very well. Also, Google, super liberal. So I'm going to have to figure out how to stop using them for this. My goodness. You're going to break down right in the middle of a podcast. That's horrible. That's horrible. Anyway, the Biden administration is now starting to attack and target the coal industry, right? I saw this the other day. Actually, it was just yesterday. I was modifying my outline. And by the year 2035, the Biden administration wants all energy production to have moved away from coal burning to generate energy. And they want coal burning to cease by something like 70%. It's somewhere around there. 70% of the energy that we have now, they want to take away by the year 2035 by stopping coal being burned to generate that energy. There are ways we can do that, but it's going to take massive amounts of money, hence the trillions of dollars the Biden administration just apparently is okay to spend at any time of the day. 70% of the energy being generated right now has to cease being generated the way it is and be generated somewhere else. With the way our energy consumption is right now, that's not going to work. Like, that is absolutely out of the question. If we develop some new technology or reinstate the building of nuclear plants and just destroy natural areas, natural habitats and federal lands, national parks, to just put mass amounts of solar panels out, then maybe we can build that back. But right now, The science isn't there for that. Like, there is no way we're going to be able to generate the same amount of energy we use today with the processes that we currently have in place. So, again, how exactly is the Democratic Party the party of the working class? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because they are attacking the jobs that built the middle class, Joe. Those unions that you claim to support so much, yeah, they helped build the middle class, but it's these industries that you're destroying that helped build the middle class. Oil, coal, steel, automobiles, all of those. You are going to have them hemorrhage money and possibly go out of business to attempt to fit to your plan that really in the long run has to happen, because oil is not a renewable resource, as you might know. It's going to run out someday unless we figure out a way to synthetically make it. And at the same time, control the emissions in case global warming's actually real, which there might be something to it, but the way that it's being pushed probably is not the true extent to what is really going on. This all seems like a liberal talking point. It's not exact, like it doesn't equate. What Joe and Kamala are saying, they don't really equate to common sense. Also, they have to have millionaires and billionaires push these ideas on the public, which by itself means the common sense of the public. The public is not stupid. As a collective, the public is a very intelligent group of people. We share ideas. And now we're starting to see those ideas being shared, censored, shut down. They won't let us share all of our ideas anymore. Why? Don't know. Probably because they have to push these ideas to get us to make the change. And they have to brainwash the population to be able to get us there. I don't know. As a whole, Biden's speech, not so great. I'm going to go ahead and move on to this next subject, which has to do with... I'm sorry about the camera shaking if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. Happens every episode. You know about it already. It's really annoying. I can't stop it. I'm sorry. This second topic is also from Biden's speech, obviously. It's also from, it's this little bitty, one sentence that he hit that, as a member of this community, worries me very, very much. Because we've already been through hell and back. People have killed themselves because of this. There's a list of people who killed themselves because of the decision made by the Obama administration and their Obama-era CDC. And as I say that, you might know what I'm talking about at this point. The opioid crisis. Biden threatened millions. And I recognize that many of you probably don't know a whole lot about this. This is something that I've been focusing on for at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. Because it started to affect me heavily. And, when was it? 2018, I guess. It's really when the heat of the crisis hit the media and things really, really started to change. Even though these guidelines had been in place since 2016, things really started to escalate after Trump took office, making it look like Trump-era policies caused this, but it's not true. Obama was president when these guidelines were written. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this, and I'm sorry if it's a sensitive topic. It's a sensitive topic for me too. We'll get through it, and I will make my point. But one thing that worried me when Biden was speaking that night was this quick little interjection of the opioid crisis. Sorry. He said critical investments must be made to address the opioid crisis. We've already done that. Okay, we've done that already. Those guidelines ruined lives. So we are not going back to that, believe me. There will be uprisings by between 50 and 100 million people. Possibly a third of the country will have something to say about, and this affects both sides of the aisle and independents. You might know somebody who is a chronic pain patient, somebody who's got some illness or disease that's painful that cannot be cured and can only be treated with pain medicines. I haven't told any of y'all this yet. It's not something that comes up very often. But I'm a member of that community. I don't like to speak about it, but when it comes up and I'm threatened by the president, in a way, I have to speak about it. And I was hoping this would never become relevant again, because it's been a very hard time for my wife and I. It's tough to talk. It's tough to talk about, and I don't really know why I chose to talk about this, other than it's got to be said. It just has to. But I'm just gonna get into it. Okay, the opioid crisis, as they present it to you, is fake. It's not true. And you can find this out for yourself. This is all over. It's just not pushed by the mainstream media. For those of you who observed the tactics used by the media and the administrations, or mainly the media. The Trump administration was much better about using certain tactics than the Biden administration has been. But they used, for the opioid crisis, they used the exact same tactics when trying to convince people and skew the stats as they did with COVID. Like, the same exact things were happening. They were intercrossing data that had no business being crossed. Like, you die of a heart attack, you didn't die from COVID. Die of a car accident, didn't die from COVID. There are certain things that can, cross over and cause death when it comes to COVID. That's also true with what they call the opioid crisis, but it's not what you think it is. It's not. It's the same message that they were pushing with COVID, that if you get this, you die. Like, it was that blatant. You get COVID, you die. Even though people were dying in motorcycle wrecks, car wrecks, getting shot, being claimed they died from COVID-19. That is exactly, in an essence, the same thing they did with the opioid crisis. They do this to try to confuse you and make you think that the issue at hand is so devastating that we must act immediately to stop it. Right? That's what they did with COVID. Right? And that's, if you start to remember, that same sort of language was used around the opioid crisis. In recent years, especially under Barack Obama, chronic pain patients have been under attack. And it's still happening to this day. I'm still scared to talk about it because I don't know what repercussions will be placed upon me if it's found out that I talk about this. Right? It's a scary thing to do. But chronic pain patients under the 2016 CDC guidelines, when those were published, talking about the way healthcare providers should prescribe these medications, it basically considered chronic pain patients and people with long-term illnesses or diseases that require these types of medications criminals and drug addicts by the government and healthcare systems and their standards. We saw it at its worst after the enactment of these guidelines. Right? For years I was fine until it really started to get media attention. And that's when healthcare providers became so scared to even write a prescription, which is their sole right as a nurse practitioner, as a doctor, a physician's assistant. They had the right to do that when it was deemed medically necessary. Yet they became so scared to lose their medical license because the DEA was attacking healthcare providers for just writing prescriptions. There are some cases where some physicians were abusing their right as a physician or someone who writes prescriptions. There are very few cases like that. But these guidelines, what happened, and this is why what Biden said worries me so much, it affected millions of people. Millions of hardworking Americans. Many of them hardworking. Just take these medicines to continue their normal lives. It's not like they're abused. Like you take it like you take Advil or, you take it every so often. But why? Like, why were they doing this? It was... Patients were just simply taking the prescriptions because they needed them. They worked. They helped people maintain their same active lives, just like they helped me. And had been doing so for years. The overwhelming majority of whom had no issues whatsoever with these prescribed medications. When the guidelines were put in place by Obama's CDC, millions of patients, not addicts, were thrown into a debilitating crisis. Just horrible. Some even were thrown into withdrawals. They were taken off their medications immediately. You are supposed to taper these medications down because you can have very serious health effects by not doing so. And why? Why were patients treated this way? For doing nothing wrong. Because the blame for these sad, unfortunate, politicized deaths were placed upon patients who take medications prescribed by doctors, not our dealers. Chronic pain patients don't do illegal substances because, mainly due to insurance, they don't want to be liable for addiction or whatever. They make you get drug tested monthly. And sometimes randomly. You can't get away with it, nor do we want to. That's how, as patients, we know it's such a fake narrative with a political agenda. I don't know what that agenda is. It's definitely not trying to save lives because they're harming millions of lives. I have some stats for you to back all this up, okay? According to the CDC, nearly 500,000 people have died from an opioid overdose between 1999 and 2019. But you have to realize this doesn't mean that people who died from an overdose where they were doing opioids as their drug of choice. They weren't necessarily doing heroin or fentanyl, right? The cartels have laced these substances with opioids to try to make them stronger so people come back for more, right? Meth, cocaine, crack, heroin, obviously, ecstasy, and even synthetic marijuana have all been found laced with fentanyl, which would qualify if someone is naive to the drug, they haven't done it before. It will affect them much more strongly than if they had not, causing an overdose. Right? It's a tolerance gets built up when it is your illegal drug of choice. You build up a tolerance, have to take more over time, like we saw with George Floyd. He had 3 times the legal limit in his blood, but supposedly didn't die from a drug overdose. This is the opposite of that. These people were not doing heroin, were not doing any sort of opioid on a mass scale at least, and they took meth or they took cocaine or synthetic weed that they bought on the street, and it was laced, and that caused them to overdose. How do we know this? 1, toxicology reports. 2, we found the illegal and illicit substances, tested them, and they were found to be laced with fentanyl, mainly coming from China, making its way through Mexico with the drug cartels. But by focusing on the opioids, they were seemingly targeting an entire group of people, the chronic pain palliative care patients, people who have to take these medications because they don't have any other choice. We tried everything else, injections. People try certain procedures. There's an electric stimulating device that stimulates nerves for nerve pain, and there's a lot of different things you can try to do, even have surgery before just trying simple medications to try to make you able to carry on with your normal life. We tried these things before, even other medications, just nerve pain medication, stronger versions of Advil, obviously different molecules, but act in the same way. Like the opioids are not the first choice. They never are, but this is the way that the media and previous administrations want you to think of it as. And that's one of the reasons why that one little line statement worried me so much. But here are some stats. At the lowest estimated number, there are 50 million chronic pain patients and palliative care patients in the United States of America. So let's go ahead and do this math, right? The math matters. CDC claims there are 500,000 deaths over time, over that 20-year period. And there are, at the lowest amount, 50 million chronic pain patients in the U.S. So if you do 500,000 divided by 50 million, you get 0.01%. There is a 0.01% opioid death to CCP. You know what I've been talking about mostly, don't you? Chronic pain patient, prescription opioid user. 0.01% of that population. The ratio. It's a ratio. It's not the chronic pain patients doing these drugs. They're, a small number, probably. But on a mass scale, that's not true. 0.01% justifies taking these medications away from people who need them, just so there's less of a chance that somebody who doesn't even encounter those substances through a prescription doesn't get addicted. That is the reason. They don't want no one wants to become addicted, I don't think. I don't think that's anyone's plan. But some people have genetic mutations or, a gene that make them more susceptible to addiction than others. We see this with alcoholics, with tobacco smokers, and unfortunately drug addicts. It's a genetic thing 90% of the time. And that is supported by findings, like scientific findings. But do you know what the problem is with this narrative? There was a new study that came out. This narrative that if you take an opioid pain medication one time, you broke your leg in a car accident, you get a pain medication. The narrative is that if you take that medication, you are most likely to become addicted to that if you take it for longer than 3 days. That's just not true. You think about the number of people who get injured per year. That's a big number. There's a lot of people who become injured, seriously injured, and they take pain medications to help them through that injury or disease, such as cancer. The narrative is that if you take those medications, you become instantly addicted. That was actually said on national media outlet channels. CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, they all pushed that. Even Fox. Tucker Carlson had his own little rant on Friday about it, and it pissed me off. Oh, did it piss me off. The narrative around pain medications is so false. The new study came out with the results that said less than 2% of people who die from prescription opioids actually have an active prescription. Less than 2%. That means at max 1.999%. At max. Less than 2% of people who die from prescription opioid overdoses actually have active prescriptions at the time. So the fact that they're taking prescriptions away from people who need them is inhumane. It is horrible. And the media is propagating that. The government is propagating that. And why? What's the point? What's the point? You're not going to save people from becoming addicted. It's not going to... If you take one substance away, they're going to find another substance. It's the same for gun control. You take away one type of gun, they're going to find another type of gun to kill people with. It's the same thing. People are going to find a way, whether you try to stop them or not. Less than 2% of people who who overdosed had active prescriptions for pain medications at that time. Yet the Obama-era CDC puts out these guidelines that target patients, not just chronic pain patients. Palliative care patients. The palliative care is for people who have a disease there is no possible cure. And it opens them up to be able to take anything they need. The Compassionate Care Act falls under, or palliative care can fall under that. But the Obama-era CDC targets patients of all kinds, even though they're not the ones doing the illegal substances. Probably close to 100% of these people have never even touched illegal substances. Probably not even seen them except for on TV. So tell me, think about it. Why are we targeting prescription medications when the street version of these drugs are the reason for the deaths? Very, very rarely do you actually get an actual pharmaceutical grade medication on the streets. If you watch Demi Lovato's recent documentary, she even tells you this. She wasn't doing what she thought she was. She was doing fentanyl. That's why she overdosed. She wanted oxycodone, regular pain medication used for surgeries and serious injuries, cancer. She got fentanyl instead. They were fake pills laced with fentanyl. She overdosed. That's the reason. Why are we targeting prescribed medications to patients who actually need them? We're not... Look, if you look at graphs of the prescription rates from 1999 to 2019, the graph trends down very, very quickly. It's a downward trend. And if you look at it from the 2016 guidelines down, deaths rise, prescriptions fall. Tell me why that happens. I'll tell you why. Because the prescriptions are not the problem. Addiction is the problem. Street drugs are the problem. The cartels are the problem. The ones who are actually providing. We're not even targeting the cartels. Why are we not fighting the cartels against everything? Like they're human trafficking. We just saw a boat capsize and kill 4 people, I think it is, 23 injured. And we're not doing anything. We're not doing anything to try to stop that. Yeah, sure, Kamala talked to somebody on the phone. Had a Skype session with them. That is not doing anything, Kamala. Do something about it. This is not the answer. Joe, if you come back and you target patients again, like you did before, you will have an uprising. I'm not calling for one. I won't even participate. But that's what's going to happen. You will see people come out of the woodwork and fight you on this. This is not the answer. Target the actual problem, the cartels, bringing the drugs into the country. That's how you stop it. And even then, they're still going to get it in. They're still going to get drugs across the border somehow. But that's the way to stem the flow of addiction. You're targeting the wrong people, man. Less than 2% have active prescriptions who die. That points wholly to the street drugs being the problem. Long-term patients, like chronic pain patients, palliative care patients, cancer patients, hardly ever turn to street drugs. They don't do it. Like 98.99% of people never touch a street drug because they aren't criminals. They're not addicts. They just want relief so they can carry out their normal life, just like me. I don't want to have to think about it every freaking minute of the day. Most are middle-aged people who are past the experimental stage in life anyway. Like, as a population, we have to take the whole picture into consideration, Joe. Don't just listen to the people around you. They're trying to push their own agendas anyway. Take the whole picture into consideration. I'm afraid there's an invisible war being waged on a large chunk of the population. The 50 to 75 to 100 million people who are affected by chronic pain conditions. Chronic pain is not the issue. Remember this. It's diseases that cause chronic painful conditions. But look, his quick reference worries me because he just blew past it like it was nothing. Like he could, once again, sign an executive order and have it all just wash away. Joe, that's not how it works, dude. You have to do the work. Unfortunately, you've been one of the laziest presidents. You hardly ever travel past the Appalachian Mountains, if you even have. Maybe to Pennsylvania once. Pittsburgh, I think. That's past the Appalachians. But you never go across country. You leave that to Kamala, don't you? You'd rather sign an executive order than actually do the freaking work to get something passed. And that's coming from someone who was in the legislature, in the Senate. I'm scared that as soon as the COVID pandemic is over, if it ever is, let's be honest, the Democrats love it, I fear that the Democrats will go straight back to the opioid crisis. And it's not only the Democrats, it's Republicans too, because they don't know. They don't know what it's like to have to live like that. Maybe they know somebody. But if you do, it changes your perspective. Absolutely. I mean, Biden was Obama's VP. He was in office at the time. These guidelines were put in place. He probably has many of the same views, especially since his son was an addict and did probably large amounts of drugs just by, judging, looking on to the situation through what's coming through the news and whatnot. And let's be honest, Joe idolizes Obama, so he probably will follow in Obama's footsteps and try to take over that way. But look, the chronic pain community, palliative care, cancer patients, mothers who just had C-sections, people who've been in car accidents, very serious car accidents, even gunshot victims at one point were not being administered pain medications, except for Tylenol and Advil. The community as a whole, the American community cannot take another hit like that. It'll only be worse. People were killing themselves when Obama was in office because they were thrown into withdrawals and the pain was just so bad they couldn't take it. They were forced off their meds by their doctors because the doctors were so scared of losing their license over correctly prescribing pain medications, even for surgeries. People who had serious major surgeries, cancer patients again, new mothers again who had C-sections, were all told to take Advil and Tylenol for the pain after they were literally cut open. Literally cut open. This is the Obama-Biden administration. And now, Biden's back in office. If we aren't careful, it'll be the same. It'll be exactly the same. These people worse than myself, are in horrible, debilitating pain. And they took their lives because of it. We can't go back to that place. We cannot. And Obama and Trump, for that matter, did nothing to address that issue. People killing themselves because of it, because of these policies. There are patients who continue to live in horrible pain today because of the 2016 CDC prescribing guidelines. Even though they've been corrected by the CDC, they were clarified, and this still happened. You probably know someone who is afflicted by chronic pain, even if they haven't told you. You know me, right? I didn't tell you yet, but I'm telling you now. If you don't know people, there are definitely people around you who have these conditions. They're all over the place. The lowest number is 50 million Americans who are afflicted every day by chronic pain. These overdoses were and are mainly being blamed on the abuse of prescriptions and the use of street drugs. And the reason I care so deeply about this is because it affects me, myself, and my wife, and my parents, and my in-laws, my future children. You're taking not just me and affecting me by these policies, you're affecting everyone around these patients. Everyone who knows these people are also affected by these decisions. Finally, I'll tell you what I have going on, and the reason that I take pain medications and see doctors and things like that. I have what's called degenerative disc disease. Basically, the discs in my back are deteriorating at a rate much faster than yours and most people's. It can be really, really painful at times, especially around big storms, which we've had a lot of recently. the pressure changes, for whatever reason, just kill me. And it kills other people with what is called DDD2, degenerative disc disease. There's a lot of people who have this. Not everybody is bad enough to take pain meds, but most people who have it are treated in some way for it. But you didn't know this about me, but I take these pain medications daily, but you don't see me overdosing or even seeming incoherent or cloudy-minded, foggy. You don't see that from me because the prescription medications are not the problem. They are not the problem. It's the street drugs that are causing the issues. I didn't cover it at first. I forgot to mention it, but those same tactics that they use for COVID are used for the ODs, the addiction rates. If somebody is taking meth and overdoses due to fentanyl, it's not marked as a methamphetamine overdose or death. It's caused by the fentanyl, so that automatically goes into the opioid death category. That's how they do it, and that goes for any drug. And if you're driving and are in a car accident, they sometimes have even included those deaths as opioid overdose deaths. It's the same exact thing as COVID. They're trying to skew our population into thinking they're demonizing these medications, and it's not right, because I highly doubt there's a single person in the United States, at least, who hasn't had or will have to take these medications for some point. And when you need them, you're going to want them. You have surgery, you're going to probably be in a good amount of pain. And if you are told to take Advil and Tylenol, you're not going to like that. It's going to be very bad. Very bad. Now imagine that every single day of your life. That's what a lot of people experience with chronic pain. And that's what these guidelines and what Joe could do in the future with the stroke of his pen, that's what it could really affect. But back to me. Eventually, because this disease started in my body so early, I started having these issues in 2009. I was in 9th grade when I started having severe back pain. And I played football, so that only made it worse. I was only diagnosed when I was 25. I lived for a good amount of time, at least 10 years with this issue before actually seeking medical attention for it. But it's inevitable at this point that my discs are going to break down in my body to the point, probably, that I start to have bone-on-bone contact in my back. My vertebrae will start to rub together and cause massive issues. It'll cause, they could actually fuse together. In severe cases, the vertebrae actually fuse together. You know, like people have surgery to do. That happens naturally also. But it's very bad for you. So hopefully that doesn't happen to me. Causes immense amount of pain. And loss of mobility, obviously. It's a horrible disease, and I'm only 2 years into my diagnosis, but more like 12 years into the journey, I guess. And I've also got at least one herniated disc in my back. And I've got 4 or 5 other bulging discs pressing on my spinal cord, which causes pain, obviously, causes inflammation and all kinds of issues for me. This has all been confirmed by MRIs. Like, I'm not lying to you about this. I don't have a reason to do that. Again, it probably happened from my football playing, and I also have a history of bad backs in my family, so it's just not going to be such a fun existence at some point, but I'm staying positive. Staying positive, of course. But it's terrible, and I'm only able to operate and function normally because of the medications. Like, they bring me close to normal. I would say, on average, my pain level per day is like a 3 to a 4. And when we have bad storms and on bad random days, I can be up to like a 9. I will never rate myself a 10 unless I've got my freaking leg chopped off or something, been shot. But, I get up there. I do. And at that point, the medication doesn't work anymore because I don't have anything that strong. And I don't want anything that strong. At least, not any time early in my life. But I'm able to function and get up off the couch and out of bed because I have medical help. And if Joe takes these medications away from me and from other people who are worse than me, then we're going to have millions of Americans paying the price for addicts abusing substances that we use on a daily basis to make life bearable, just to make it through the day. Don't get confused. Like this, I'm not advocating these medications for everybody. This is not like you should only take these medications if you need them. And unfortunately, I seem to need them. And if you've had someone in your family who's been affected by addiction, I'm so sorry. That's horrible. And I don't put any personal blame on them. Like, a lot of time it's not their fault. It's a genetic thing that just happens. I don't know why. Not a medical expert in that, but it's a horrible thing to have to deal with. And, unfortunately, people have to go through that sometimes. It's not a good thing. It's horrible. Hopefully at some point we can find a way to deter addiction as a whole, but still use medications that help. It's just horrible. I'm sorry that I've gone on for so long about this, because I really didn't mean to, and I didn't even want to talk about this so early in this podcast, but this is a very important thing about me and for me to advocate for. We should absolutely not restrict doctors from prescribing the medications they see fit. Joe, do not get in the way of doctors and patients. Don't put yourself in the middle of that relationship, because it never works out well for the patient, the people who need help. Most people don't seek medical attention. They don't like to. It makes you feel weak. And when you put that stigma on it, when you say that these medications are bad, that just makes people suffer more. Don't do that, Joe. Don't do it. Yes, we do need to take steps to address the illegal drug crisis in this country. There is not an opioid epidemic. There is an illegal drug epidemic in this country. How dare you accuse everyday Americans of that? 50 million of us on the small end. How dare you? You will have a lot of people very, very upset in your own party, even, if you choose to do what Obama did. guys, I'm sorry that that ended so dark. It's a very important subject for me, and I am sure that it'll be brought back up, especially if Joe does what I hope that he doesn't do. If you have any questions about the quote-unquote opioid epidemic that's being pushed by a false narrative by our media, please do your own research and feel free to ask questions, and I will try to help you navigate those figures, those facts and figures, and some medical knowledge that I have an understanding of because I'm in this position, unfortunately. I will try to help you understand if you want help understanding. But again, just look at the data for yourself, because that's the best way to do it. And I'm gonna cut it off here because we're pretty far into this, right? I'm sorry it ended so dark. I'll let you get on with your days. Overall, guys, Joe's speech, super boring. Just another list of liberal wishes that the Democrats will fall over themselves, slip on their own drool while talking about it on cable news networks. Like, that's all it is. It's just a bunch of... it's a wish list of what they want, and they put it, on Joe to deliver that wish list. And you will hear the exact same things being repeated on the cable news networks, unfortunately. But I mean, Joe tried his best, right? He tried his best. He got his point across, whatever it was. He didn't fall asleep, so that's good. But just like the Oscars, viewership was down, like way down. Joe got half the amount of viewers. If you haven't seen, I know it's been a while since he actually spoke, but he got half the amount of viewers in his first speech that Trump got for his first speech. That doesn't bode so well for 2022, does it? Clearly, Joe is not as popular as the media wants you to think, which is so true. But they don't care. The left is going to continue to push their agenda and lay Biden out there for abuse, I guess, because right now it's not looking so good for him. But that, I'm here to be a part of the country that pushes back on Joe, and it's great. I'm happy to be here, happy to give my opinion if anyone wants to listen. There's a few of y'all out there, and I appreciate it so much. I really do. Help me get the word out so I can make this difference that I actually want to make. Like, I'm not here doing this for nothing. I really am not. I want to make a difference for our country. I really do. And why is this playing? My goodness. If you could hear that, somehow I pressed the play button and it started playing the outro song that you hear. Anyway, thank y'all so much for listening and watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell on YouTube, because eventually they are not going to like me very much because I am speaking against their narrative. And word of mouth is the best way to advertise anyway. So if you like what I'm doing, please help me share this with your friends and family, and just retweet it, echo it. Just get the word out there, because I'm trying to do something very important for this country. I really am. And obviously, as you know, people are going to trust your word way more than they're going to trust mine about this podcast. So, and if you do appreciate what we're doing here, I do have a Patreon. You can go and check that out. The link's in the description. If you feel like giving, please do. If you don't, no pressure, no hard feelings. Follow me on Parler and Twitter at Connor Womble, with an ER, obviously. And follow me through the podcast account on Twitter and Instagram at Polly_Millennial with one N. Thank y'all so much, and I will see y'all in the next episode.